Welcome to Behind the Production May Edition, the show that takes you behind the scenes of some of the top churches and production teams across the country to give you a picture into the behind the scenes look and the ins and outs of what they do, but most importantly, the why behind everything we do as ministry techs. If we are meeting for the first time, my name is Chris Pyron, and I am joined today by the best hair in Nashville, Mr. Jordan McMillian. Jordan, how we doing this morning, man?
We
Or afternoon,
are
I guess. It's
doing,
afternoon already, isn't it?
honestly, I think it is afternoon. Yeah, I
It
think it is
is.
afternoon. Two
It is.
o'clock afternoon.
Days flying
Uh,
by. It's great, though.
it
It's
truly
great.
is.
Dude,
Yeah,
I'm
thanks
super excited
everybody
to be
for
doing
being
another
here.
one of these with you.
This is seriously so good. I'm pumped to be a part of it.
Awesome.
It seems like too long ago we did our first one, honestly.
I think we're going to need to turn the frequency up on these. It's taking too long. Yeah, we need to start doing these a lot sooner or a lot shorter intervals for sure. So, well, Jordan and I are on the team at E2I here. The video you just watched had the tagline there, "Uniquely You" at the end. Jordan, you want to talk a little bit about that and what we mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, it really dives into why we exist, right? The birth of E2I came from the understanding of being able to use technology and leverage technology to create an experience for your particular ministry, to bring together your vision and mission and purpose of that ministry, and use technology to really find the right tools and technology for you. And so that's kind of where it really, kind of dives in. We partner with ministries from across the country, across the world, to do just that. A lot of people will use other ministries as a guidepost, but it's so important to make sure that we're taking into consideration all of the things that make you you. And so, how do we amplify that? How do we maximize that? How do we optimize that? And that's something we're really excited to be a part of, and I'm just really excited to be a part of this experience today to really kick this off with the guys at Life.Church.
Absolutely, for sure. Me too. Me too. Yeah, we are really passionate about bringing the worship community together here, and I'm so thrilled to see everybody here. Just a couple shout outs. Alex, I see you over there. Glad you're with us today. Ryan, good to see you, man. Thanks for showing up. Brother Drew Hornback, all the way from the left coast out there in California. Hope you're doing well, man. Good to see your name and your face popping up here. So, but yeah, part of what we love to do is just figure out ways that we can add value to the worship community by bringing folks together. And today we have so much value stacked up for you guys. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. We are joined by a couple members of the central production team from Life.Church in Oklahoma City. Life.Church, I'm sure you know who they are. If you don't, they are definitely the pioneering ministry in what we know as multi-site church today. Back in the early 2000s, they really set the definition of what a multi-site, multi-campus church model looks like. And over the last 20 years, they've continued to grow that and innovate and find new solutions and ways to create meaningful, engaging, impactful worship experiences for their congregation, not just the in-person congregations who are meeting at the campuses, but also the online campuses as well. And today we are lucky enough to be joined by two gentlemen from the Life.Church team that make it all happen. We've got Mr. Warren Davis and Sam Nafee. Guys, thank you so very much for being here today.
How's it going?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Glad to be here.
Awesome. Good to see you. So, Warren, let's start off with you, man. Tell us a little bit about what's your role at Life.Church. What do you focus on? What do you do there?
Sure. At Life.Church, I have the privilege of leading our broadcast support team. And our main focus is maintaining all the infrastructure that makes the weekend happen for multi-site. So from campus to campus video distribution, as well as the back end of like Life.Church Online. So all the video encoding and then transmission on a weekly basis. We also support all of the broadcast gear that's inside of our Edmond campus location. So if you've seen our video on Church Front, all of the Ross Furios, the Sony F55 cameras, Sony switching, all of the cool gear that's in the racks there, our team gets to just maintain and keep it tip-top shape, all that stuff, so we can leverage those pieces of equipment to push the ministry and mission forward.
Awesome. Cool. Sam, what about you? What's your role and what's your focus there?
Yeah, I'm the audio director at Life.Church, and our team oversees just anything with audio attached to it, which these days just about every piece of content. We're lucky enough to partner with our creative media team and all the filmmakers and editors and content creators that serve the ministry of Life.Church. We partner with them to make sure that the audio is clean and clear, and that ultimately the message of the gospel is heard through worship, right, through any medium that we happen to be working in that day.
Very cool. Yeah, I've long said that the church has the best message in town. Everybody ought to be able to hear it, right? So I've always been a huge proponent for great audio, which we were kind of joking about earlier before we kicked off here. So
true that.
Give me a little bit about your background, guys. Warren, how did you get started in church tech?
Well, I grew up in the church, actually met my wife in the youth group. So we are those people in terms of being high school sweethearts. Just really my only real girlfriend. Went to, through high school and into college years together. And she's actually a worship pastor here at one of our campuses. And when we were in the youth group together, kind of our connection was I was a musician. And she was a vocalist, and we kind of teamed up and started leading worship for the youth group. And that led us into a season of itinerant worship ministry, through college and into our early adulthood. And around 2005, not around 2005, but at 2005, we had our first child. And in that season, we decided to stop traveling and had an opportunity to step into full-time church ministry for the first time, which was just a huge, awesome opportunity, to get to do ministry, the other 51 weeks of the year, as I used to say, and so we did that for a few years, and I was on that end of the stage. And just through the opportunity of getting to be around production, I started gravitating towards primarily audio, and developing a gift for mixing and developing that skill in myself. And that led me to stepping kind of away from the stage and transitioning more into audio production. A few years later, a couple church staffs later, I was the technical director at one place. And then in 2015, we wound up having the opportunity to join the team here at Life.Church as an AVL engineer. And so that's I've worn a few different hats here. But just had the opportunity to support the church and the mission of the church, from technology or from the creative side, on stage, off stage, behind the scenes, wherever God has, saw fit to use me. So I've just stepped into this broadcast role about 3 years ago, and we're just nose down, plowing the field on the broadcast side. Trying to land that thought there. There we go.
That's cool. No, that's great that you've been able to see both sides of the stage, right? Because I know as a lot of techs, a lot of us have started in the tech world and just kind of always been there. But the fact that you've started on stage as well, do you feel like that gives you a different perspective or different insight a little bit?
Absolutely. And I've always leveraged that. One thing I know is often for me, it's like all about people. And so we are in the tech side of it, in the production side of it, we're in a service-oriented industry. Whether you do this in a faith-based position or not, it's a service industry. And serving the people that are on the stage is like paramount to you succeeding in what you're doing. And so having been on the stage, I just have a good sense of, I know what, when I was mixing, I would kind of have that intuition of, I know what a lead singer or a drummer is looking for in a monitor mix. And I know the aesthetic of how they want the music to be presented. And so I'm going to leverage that in how I serve them. I know how I would like the stage to look, in terms of it not being a rat's nest. So I'm going to leverage that in how I set the stage so that they can focus on crafting moments where they experience God through worship. And so that just philosophy of taking that perspective and applying it to whatever role that I was doing, I think has been huge in my ability to serve others well.
Awesome. Very cool. Sam, what about you, man? What's your story? How'd you get involved in church tech?
Man, it's a pretty similar story. I did grow up in church, but it was an Episcopal church, so very mass-based, very much by the hymnal and the prayer book. So there wasn't a whole lot of technology, but there was a little bit. So we had some experience with microphones and things. And then I just played in bands growing up through high school, college, and I was lucky enough to have a good friend who I played in a band with. His father was super interested in helping us out and in creating teaching opportunities and learning opportunities for us. So he bought us a PA. So, a good old Mix Wizard 16.2.
Come on, baby.
And a pair of JBLs. We carted around everywhere. And I just always I enjoyed playing guitar, and I still enjoy playing. But I was always kind of fascinated. It's like, okay, how could we make this thing sound as good as possible for everybody in every seat? So I really started to just toy around with audio and just what it meant to record, what it was like to set up a PA and make it sound good. And kind of fast forward to college, that same friend and I were at the same school, and he was playing bass at the Stillwater, Oklahoma campus of Life.Church, and called me on a Wednesday, and I was actually working at a golf course at the time. And he called me and said, "Hey man, we don't have a sound guy tonight. Like, something happened. Is there any way you can come and just mix for us tonight?" I was like, "Sure, I'll be right there." So I went and mixed, and it was Wednesdays are youth nights at Life.Church. So it was a youth night, and I mixed, and then everything went seemingly well, and they asked me to come back the next week. So I came back the next week, and kind of just kept happening. And fast forward again, after I got married, we were living in Tulsa, and I got involved in the Life.Church South Tulsa campus. We were attending there, and was able to step into a position where I could help out in the booth and start mixing front of house there. So I spent my time mixing, playing a little bit of guitar, and just learning about Life.Church and the culture, and deepening my relationship with the Lord. And got lucky enough to step on staff in the same year as Warren, 2015.
It's a good year.
It was a good year. Yeah, it was in a similar role as an ABL technical engineer, and where we just supported the production needs of the campus, and really just learn, for me personally, just really learning what it means to be in ministry and to pastor and to lead volunteers and really leverage technology, for a greater cause.
Gotcha. Those are great stories, guys. And I love that you have both been able to, use those skills that you've honed over the years to be able to use them in a ministry role like this. This is awesome. Definitely Life.Church is seen as one of the leaders, if not the leader, when it comes to multi-site churches, right? And video live streaming. You guys were doing it as the normal model for your church well before, a lot of other folks were jumping on board, and especially in the last year with folks needing to move that way, especially, right? So having been able to serve at some Life.Church campuses over the years, I've been able to see a little bit of that process, and how things run so smoothly. Give me a little bit of your thoughts on why is it important to have such a well executed and intentional, experience for, again, not just the live, in-person audience, but also for the web campus and the online audience?
Sure. Well, I think it all starts with the importance of the message that we're trying to communicate. And so we're not trying to use technology to have the loudest subs or the coolest lasers or the most 4K cameras. All of these are great tools, but they're just vehicles that we get to leverage to communicate the gospel to the hearts and minds of people. And that's the most important message that this anybody in this world is going to hear. And we truly believe that. And so that's really where it starts, is if that's our value, then we need to invest appropriately into making sure that we have the right tools to get that in as high quality, distraction-free methodology as possible. So we have one of our kind of axioms here that says we believe excellence honors God and inspires people. And so it's not excellence so that people would look at all the cool tech that we play with. It's excellence because we truly believe it honors God. But we truly also believe that if you're an attender in person or online, that we are honoring you by making sure that it gets to you in as high quality as possible and as practical with minimal distractions. So
that's great. That's so cool. Honoring God and honoring people, and the way we use the technology for worship is great. So let's talk about a little bit about the operational workflow each week, because obviously to get to that level of execution, what's the line? We strive for perfection and settle for excellence, right? Talk a little bit about the workflow that you guys have for the week leading up to the weekend experiences, as well as an actual service, and what that looks like from a standpoint of getting everybody all on the same page.
Sure. Well, I think, every week, one of the things that's paramount to us is not as much gear. It's more process and systems. And so it starts with communication. And so I am in more meetings than I sometimes would care to be. But there's a lot of things that are going back and forth interdepartmentally or between teams, and just making sure that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, and that we have clear communication across the organization into what we're aiming for that weekend. I think for all of the texts that are online, sometimes technology fails. All tech is fallible, but most of the time that I've had like the crash and burn, it can generally be boiled back to there was a gap in communication or a gap in preparation. And so as much of that as we can stave off during the week, that's where we start by honoring the weekend, is just by doing the work during the week to make sure that everybody knows what we're aiming at, everybody knows what they're accountable for, and what they're bringing to the table for the weekend, so that everything's functional and good to go. And then the weekend is just running the play that we've practiced. We're not winging it and hoping. We've had clear communication and collaboration across teams. So that's kind of where it starts. If the mechanics of that workflow, we'll have a weekly pre-production meeting. We have weekly tests. I challenge our team not to walk out the door on Thursday without every bumper or piece of programming or lighting element already being checked and tested, so that if it crashes and burns on a Saturday, I can look and say, hey, we went through our pre-flight checklist, as it were, and we missed. You said it yourself, Chris. We aim at perfection, but we settle for excellence. So we say like, excellence is not perfection, but excellence is the absence of negligence. And so during the week, how can we do all the things that are correct so that we're not negligent towards the weekend? And again, that goes back to honoring the attender, either online, in person, or through the lens at one of our multi-site campuses.
That's great. You started to talk about the mechanics a little bit of how the weekend works. Give everybody a picture of what is a normal, I guess, for like, I hate to use that word right now because we've been.
Well, I also hate to use the word new normal.
Yeah. No, we're not going to use that one. But what does a normal weekend look like at Life.Church? Talk everybody through, because it's one pastor preaching from one location that is then fed to all the satellite campuses, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So if you're not familiar with our ministry, definitely follow at Craig Rochelle on all of the socials. And I would definitely encourage, if there's one thing I could probably promote from us, would be Pastor Craig's leadership podcast. It's not technology focused, but for those of you that are ministry and in tech ministry, there is so much truth and wisdom throughout all the episodes that you could apply to leading and loving your people well. And I know it would add value to your ministry. So I'm going to promote that for just a second. Now, back to your question. So on our old normal, so now I'm going to use those terms, but our old normal, Pastor Craig would be the primary communicator, and he would preach from 2019 on. He would preach out of our Edmond campus location. So that is our new broadcast facility that we opened in July of 2019. So we're coming up on 2 years. And he would preach a message Saturday night at 4:00, and then twice at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning and 11:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. So 3 times total for a weekend. Then he would select which one of those runs that he felt man, I really nailed the 10. And that would kind of become our message for the remainder of the weekend. And that would live on an archive.
Get swapped out at church.
Yeah,
online.
get swapped out on Life.Church online. And so that was kind of our rhythm. When we went into the pandemic, obviously churches were still deemed essential, but we weren't meeting. And so we got into a season of pre-producing messages, having sermon tapings during the week. And as we've slowly opened up, we've actually kind of kept that rhythm. We had Pastor Craig preach live last weekend, but that was the first time in a little bit that we hadn't had a message that was pre-produced or captured earlier. And what we found is that gives us a little bit of more flexibility in post-production. We launched Saturday with that message already going to YouTube, so it's already accumulating those metrics.
For clarity too, you're saying when we pre-record, a lot of times it's earlier that week as well.
Yeah.
It's not super.
So as an example, tonight we're actually filming 2 messages with Pastor Craig at 7:00 at the Edmond campus.
One will be this weekend,
and one is for this weekend, and one is for the next weekend. So I may be going out on a rabbit trail here, but Chris, to answer the first question, we'll have one communicator that goes for all 36, going on 100 locations, and also Life.Church online. And so that all the vision and communication is singular, and it starts with Pastor Craig or those that we bring in to share the stage with him throughout the year.
Gotcha. Cool. How do you pull off timing across all the different campuses? Is there a way for them to play back locally when they're ready for the sermon? Because everybody does live worship with their own band at each of the 36, almost 100 campuses, right?
Yeah. So on that end of it, what we do is we'll transmit our master broadcast clock from Edmond. And we right now use an internet stream. And so there's a specific latency, and it's around 12, 13 seconds. And so we'll transmit time of day through our internet stream to all of the multi-sites. And then a tech, it's pretty simple, but a tech at the other end will look at that return feed, and their time of day, their actual like GPS time of day might be 4:25. And the clock on their feed might say 4:25:11, and they'll click the clock to account for that offset to where their sat time is relative. So for you audio guys, we always talk about phase is not absolute, phase is relative. Our timing is actually relative a little bit. I see that smile, Chris. And so they might be offset from GPS time 12 seconds. And what that does for us is the worship set can be however long, that is going to be at a local campus, but they'll back time that to where it ends at 18 minutes after the top of the hour. So for a 4:00 service, worship is going to end at 4:18, and everything on worship's pre-produced inside of Pro Tools. And so we'll press play on Pro Tools. The worship pastor will lead through that set, and it ends at 4:18. Then we'll have a campus pastor come up, and they do kind of a touch moment, cast vision, maybe throw the series promo for the next weekend. And they have 3 minutes of stage time. And they do stage drills every week to make sure that they land that timing. They're looking at the back of the room, and they land that communication right at 4:21. And that's when we're live everywhere. And so that campus pastor will say, man, we have a great message. Let's go right now to Edmond, Oklahoma, and hear from Pastor Craig Rochelle. Boom, it's 4:21, and then our text just takes that. So we don't have any way of displacing the sermon. Like, we're not recording and storing and then like have a growing file. It's just, we're synced up. It's a very simple process again. Tech low, just offset the clock.
You asked about recording too as well. So the local campuses are recording they are recording locally. So say we pre-produce that message on the first round, they're going to take it live and then we'll record it as local backups, usually on 2 different devices. So that there's multiple backups. And then if there's any services that deviate from our schedule, our broadcast schedule, they have the ability to play that locally, but they're still running the same timing as if we were live.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. That's an insanely simple process. It's way easier than I thought it was. I thought
there
had to be some right.
Yeah.
Click at right time and take the offset.
We've actually looked at how can we send SMPTE down? How could we sync up in-ears? There are a lot of churches, and what happens is the more complex the system gets, the less scalable it is. And so for us, part of what we feel our vision is scale. And so sometimes those processes just need to be as simple as possible and as practical as possible. And so we could make it, we could complicate it, and that actually could give us some options that we don't have right now, but we trade those off just for the simplicity of it, so that we can scale more efficiently.
Gotcha. So you mentioned a tech at each of the local campuses, each of the satellite campuses. Talk to me a little bit about the overall structure with staff, volunteers, techs, and all of that. You know, I know you, Warren, and Sam. I know you too. You're both kind of big on the mantra of it's not the gear, it's the people behind it, right?
1,000.
Talk to me a little bit about what does that structure look like across all 36 campuses?
Sure. So from a staff perspective, the worship pastor at each location is kind of the production head, if that makes sense. There's no technical director. The worship pastor is the technical director, also, obviously the worship pastor. So they lead a team of volunteers and contractors and band and various groups of people that just execute the mission on the local campus side. So a lot of times we kind of have a Microsoft Teams chat going with each campus on the weekend. And a lot of times on the other end of that chat, it is a volunteer. So that kind of guides our communication, our approach to everything that we do is we're trying to gear it towards volunteer engagement and how can we create more opportunities for people to ultimately get plugged into the church, because we're all looking to be needed and known. We're all looking to be plugged in and engaged. We're most engaged, we're most the church whenever we're providing those opportunities. So as many of those we can provide, that's what we're all about.
Yeah, I'd even add to that. A lot of our role is equipping and training the saints for ministry. And often in tech, we want to do. And really, when you're walking this ministry journey and you have people that you're leading, you want to give away, but not as a, please go do this task for me, but it's an opportunity for them to also participate. And so the investment from us is not in what we do, but honestly, it's in other people and allowing them to serve and come alongside of us and participate in the ministry. So when you reframe that from, I need to go do whatever is on your task list today, to the important thing is people. And I'm here, God's put me in this position to equip and train the saints for ministry. It's a total mind shift as a church tech.
Cool. Let me flip this whole conversation now 180 degrees, because we are training the saints for ministry. We have these people who we are pouring into and investing in, and we're giving them tools to do a job for the ministry, right? Obviously, it takes these tools to make it all come together. So what do you look for when you're trying to choose the right tools and the right technologies and the right processes to help support the vision and direction of Life.Church?
That's a great question. We were talking about this the other day. You had a great.
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to first, simplicity and scalability. Simple is always better than complex. And then what is scalable? In terms of people, there's everybody's at a different spot in their journey and in their faith journey. Some people are even in our doors and they're anti-faith, and maybe their only connection to the church is operating the lights, or the piece of gear. So it's hard to establish here's my mandate, and this is where I want them to be in their walk with Christ, because they may not even be there yet. And what we don't want to do is create a barrier or a bar for somebody to experience the truth and love of God in community with others. But ultimately, like, you want somebody that is passionate. Like, you can't replace passion. You want somebody that is teachable and coachable, because at some level, all of us are teachable and coachable. And we all had like a starting point in our journey in terms of developing our soft skills for the ministry, and, you know, our relationship with Christ. It's constantly growing and evolving. But just, I'm a big believer in that God crosses people into your path for a reason, and God brings you the right people at the right time. And so I think just having the eyes to see, and then the heart to step into leading and pastoring and developing and investing in people. So in terms of like, what's the right person? I'd love persons with, I'd love Lee Fields as a volunteer to mix at all of our campuses. That exists, but it's the exception to the rule. It's not the rule. And so sometimes it's taking the people that you have and that God's put in front of you, and then helping them discover their passion and walking the journey with them. So
In terms of gear, we look at the problem we're trying to solve first. And we're not going to let a piece of gear dictate how something's going to go. We're going to dictate the piece of gear for how we want it to go. And a lot of how we make that decision is exactly what Warren's talking about. It's just the why, the scalability, and things like that. So when we do select a piece of gear, we want it to serve a function. We want it to do it well. We want it to be reliable. But, you know, we also want it to be affordable. We want it to be, again, reliable. I know I just said that, but just like, yeah.
But also affordable is not cheap.
Right.
Cheap things cost a lot of money. And so like we're all leading different ministries, and your ministry budget may be different than what ours is. And you may think, oh man, well, I can't afford X, Y, Z. And so I'm not trying to promote like the highest end gear. But at the same time, I would encourage everybody to invest. We don't think, like Pastor Craig says this, we don't spend resources, we invest resources. And I would encourage everybody, if you're stewarding a tech budget, to invest it into the best equipment that you can afford. And that's practical for your ministry. Because again, it ties back to that why of we're carrying the gospel message, and we don't need things that are not reliable, or that are, you know, if we can set ourselves up with the best possible infrastructure, then it's only making our ministry more effective and more impactful. And that's what we're here for. And so don't hear like affordable is cheap. But sometimes you just, sometimes no purchase is better than
True.
You know, any purchase.
We've done that a lot of times.
Yeah. You know, wait and God gives you more resources, and then you make the right purchase a little bit later down the road. But I also believe the approach just trumps the tools. And so taking the tools you have with the right approach and the right mindset, I think God blesses that too.
Absolutely, he does, for sure. And I love the comment you made about holding off on making a purchase today, because I would much rather wait and buy 4 of the right thing later on down the road than to buy 4 of the wrong thing today, because that's what I can afford.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
Hold on to those resources just a little bit longer, sock it away, let that grow, and then buy the right thing in another 4 to 6 months. Right. So, Well, cool. We started to touch on this a little bit ago, but 2020 was the year that it was. It got weird. It got different for everybody. It even got different for you guys, even though you've been doing this multi-site live or online campuses, in addition to, all the live campuses for 20 years now. How through that have you guys been able to continue to create and cultivate like engaging experiences for those who are joining on the church online platform?
Yeah, I mean, Warren and I are lucky in the sense that we're standing on the shoulders of a lot of people who have already put this work in and really have developed this model, and we're just stewarding it at this point. So we really value just what is going to be the most engaging, what is going to minimize distractions, and what is going to ultimately again, it all goes back to the main thing. Like we want to keep the main thing, and the main thing is the gospel. The main thing is Jesus. So we're just anything we can do to make sure that we're out of the way, and that gear is out of the way, and that the even down to the programming is put together in a way that keeps somebody engaged online, because we all know how kind of that the attention span can be, especially in a video format online. A lot of people are watching things at 1.5 times speed, 2 times speed. So just really making sure that we're keeping people engaged and just being thoughtful in that regard.
What I know is that for those of you who didn't attend this live and you're watching it later, it's definitely on 1x speed, because you're not speeding through this content. This is because but
this is good
there
stuff, man. You got to chew on every bit of it. There's no reason to 1.5x this. Don't know.
Absolutely. But I would say, how do we make that experience as engaging as possible? One of the shifts we've made in the past year and a half, actually coming from Edmond, is we were at one point pre-recording all of our worship sets, and we would cycle them through. So we might have what we would call a church online shoot, and that would last for an entire day, where we might film
15 songs.
Yeah. And then they would all go into a song bank, and then a week, any given week, we might say, okay, we want this from this, and we want this from this, and kind of load them in a playlist format. And that worship set was executed with like a very, very high production value, but sometimes maybe it wasn't like cohesive and
or current.
Oftentimes you would see one of our worship pastors, and from song 2 to 3, his hairstyle would change, and you're just like, hey, that was how do we do that? So so we transitioned into we still want the production value to be super high, but we want that worship set to be like really happening now, and so our what we call our Life.Church online team kind of transitioned into, we take the worship live on Saturday at 4 p.m. And record it, mix it down, and we add that as a part of our Life.Church online package. And it just, to me, it's not a tangible thing, but it just, when we're trying to communicate through the lens, you already have this barrier. And so to be as authentic and real as possible, I just felt like there was a step that, not that we weren't before, but it just took it to a different level. And then we're very intentional, our Life.Church online team is, with like the communication pieces. We mentioned that pastoral touch moment that happens at the campuses. That moment also happens at Life.Church online. And so we want that experience to be consistent, even though you're on a digital platform. We still value as an attender. We have a Life.Church online pastor that's trying to make a relational connection with you. We had a huge uptick in 2020, especially during the quarantine, of staffers engaging on the Life.Church online chat, and just trying to make people feel like, hey, we're worshiping with you. We're all in this thing together. We're engaging too. We even crashed our own platform a couple times to where we would have like, hey, everybody from the South OKC campus, you're going to attend Life.Church online at 8:30 a.m. on Sunday. And then everybody from the OKC campus, you're going to go at 5 p.m. Remember those days? Like, and that feels like 3 years ago now to me, but it's like, it's just, we did a lot of shifts, and we just tried to make it as relational and connecting as possible. Like, production value is important, and that's high, but making a connection, being as real and authentic through the lens, that's what makes the difference to us.
For sure. So that's funny. You had to ration your bandwidth on on the weekends. That's awesome. That's a great problem to have, though. That's a great problem to have.
It is.
So, well, I'm going to go back to something we talked about a little bit earlier. Sam, I want to kind of put you in the hot seat here for just a minute. Warren, feel free to jump in and bail him out at any point if you want to. But we were talking about the importance of audio, right? And then having a great mix for broadcast. And that's obviously... Is
this another one of those 180 degree shifts? And if so, is it phase or polarity?
Neither yet, because we want to keep everything in phase, in polarity, right? So Sam, talk to me a little bit about the importance of audio for broadcast specific? Because that's your
Sure.
seat on a weekend, right? Is mixing for broadcast. So how can that mix, kind of make or break a worship experience or an online event in your eyes?
Well, there's a lot of things that go into it, and we all, anybody who's in ministry and doing this, we're all aware of, what can make or break. Obviously, what could break something is no audio, right? No video can happen. No offense for him, but no video can happen, and we can still have church with audio. So it is very important, and we value it, and we value just making sure that things are clear. Like we could get into like compression and LUFS and all this stuff like that, but really, like, what's important is that, was it clear? Did the attender online have to turn their volume up too loud? Was it loud enough? Was it distraction free? Were the things happening in the room that could cause a distraction online? So really just keeping the end user in mind, the attender in mind, and making sure we're crafting a mix that is ultimately just accessible, clear, and distraction free.
Great.
Yeah, and I would say, obviously, video is a large passion of mine, and I think it definitely plays a role, Sam. But I heard early in my audio career, it was, hey, video is like the sizzle, but audio is the steak. And so it's like if you and I were to lose video signal right now, we could still have this conversation. But if you and I were to lose audio, the effectiveness of what we're doing right now would drop to near zero. And so it's just so important to have good quality audio. I think it's Don Davis who said this quote from like the 70s or 80s. And it was like, if bad audio were fatal, it would be the leading cause of death. And so,
well, everybody has ears. I mean, like everybody has opinions. So, we just try to like really try to account for them as much as possible. And like no opinion is a bad opinion when it comes to audio.
Absolutely.
Like, if somebody says it, they experienced it, so it's not like you're lying. It wasn't too loud in the second row. It was probably too loud. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just being open and having a heart to serve, because that's ultimately what we're doing. So instead of it's real easy if like you say you get some feedback, and I mean the opinion kind.
Yeah, not regenerative.
Like that maybe it doesn't sit well with you. That's okay. Like a person experienced it, and that's an opportunity for you. That's an opportunity to pastor. Like we say this all the time. Like we pastor first and we audio second. So like that's an opportunity to engage with an attender, whether it be virtually online or in a room. And really just like use that as a ministry opportunity to like engage with them and make them feel heard and make them feel needed.
But it's also not placating somebody who comes to you with feedback, because the reality is sometimes as techs, we have the right language to articulate what somebody might be feeling and experiencing, and they don't. And so that disconnect kind of makes us, if it could puff you up, the Bible says knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. And you can think, well, I am the expert at this, or I have a degree in audio engineering, or I've been mixing for X amount of years. You wouldn't even know how to turn on the sound console. And in our heart, we're trying to invalidate their feedback. But the reality is there's probably an element of truth in whatever they're saying. They may not have the right language to wrap that piece of feedback, but they're trying to express something that's true to you. And if you're open and saying, okay, I'm committed, I want to get better, and ultimately I want to serve this person as much as I want to serve the large audience. How is there something here that's actionable for me that I can use to serve this person better and to grow from it?
Trying to mine out whatever that nugget of truth is that might be in there. It's like, okay, I could probably chew on that a little bit and see what's going on there.
Yeah,
that's great. That's cool. So Sam, I don't want to get into LUFS and metering and goniometers and all that kind of stuff, because I have a feeling Jordan will probably fall asleep on us over there. I mean, he probably will, honestly. But anyway, maybe. So Sam, when you're building a broadcast mix, and I know this is a hard question to answer, but what would you say is the most important thing when you're building a mix to go out for live stream?
Oh, that is a hard question. I mean, again, that intelligibility, all those like those kind of that is I would consider a fundamental, right? So if we're talking about blocking and tackling, like intelligibility is going to be a fundamental. Level is going to be a fundamental, right? The compression techniques are going to be a fundamental. I think one thing that's kind of like the finishing salt, if you will, the salt bay
on the steak.
On the steak is really like just a solid crowd mic can really make a big difference, especially when you're viewing something through a screen and through a lens, and there's you see that it maybe is in 2D, but you see the space that whatever you're experiencing is occurring in. I think even just one microphone in the back of the room, I'm going to say what kind of microphone, any microphone in the back of the room, getting a little bit of that can become the glue, can become what could take your broadcast from something that is kind of very intimate and very different to really bringing it up and making it immersive for the person trying to watch in the room. You get that applause, you get that ambiance, you get
it's context.
Yeah, it's context. You were talking about this the other day, like how, sometimes like especially like if you're mixing and like say you don't have a dedicated broadcast mix and you just have one console and you're spitting out a broadcast feed off the console. You were talking about this the other day. It's like,
if you have one console, and how often do we record our board mixes? I remember recording board mixes before you could do it on a USB drive. So Chris, you're probably with me. I mean, even before it was, it used to be an optical disc. No, they look like Frisbees now, but I would record on tapes. And then I would listen to these things back and I'd be like, that was not my experience in the room. The vocals are way up here and the drums are way down here. And it just didn't have that perspective. I thought this was great. And then I'm reevaluating my life choices because I think the mix is so bad. And so you can work really strategically, even if you're on one desk, to set yourself up to where what you mix in the room translates to that online experience or downstream destination, whatever that is. There's some, for me, we talk about what's the main thing with building a broadcast mix. To me, it goes to Pastor Craig's mic for our context. Like if that is intelligible, then we're good. Like, because those are things that I think you said they're fundamentals. For me, they're objective. Like that was an objective. It was loud enough. I didn't have to crank my laptop and I could hear the words. The subjective stuff might be, man, I really like to sidechain that bass guitar to that kick drum. And man, what was that plug-in you used on the guitar? Like those are cool, but that's subjective. But like if you have one console and you can orchestrate your mixes to where you have a crowd mic feeding it, and you've compensated maybe the mix that feeds online to match the frequency response of the PA to where your processing and equalization changes track throughout. Like it's just intentional. And even going back to like doing stuff during the week to prep and process your own processes, not processing. That's where it starts, and it's way more of that stuff than it is
100%.
gear.
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You both said something that leads me to a question that I saw here that I think would be really good for you to both dive in on. Warren, you talked about recording the tape. I was a little more bougie. I had a mini disc that I recorded my board mixes on.
There you go.
I probably have some cassettes somewhere too, but so let's say someone jumps in the chat here and says, "Hey, no way." Oh, there's one right there.
Let's keep this plan going.
It says 02 on it.
02, nice. Let's say someone has not, but let's say someone jumps in the chat here and said, "Hey, my church has limited people, and we have one console, and I need to get noise. I need to get a mix, going out to our live stream because we are running to an encoder, and we're using the church online platform for our church. And where do I even start, and how do I develop an excellent stream with that, or how do I develop an excellent mix to go along with that?"
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what's available to you, and you can make it great with any piece of gear, and again, like Warren was talking about, like PA optimization, or just, say you've got speakers on a stick and you've got a 6-channel analog console, just even splitting out that output and spitting it to a stream, that's going to be helpful. It's not about, I can't broadcast online because clearly I don't have this, I don't have an extra mix, it's just, I think it's just a willingness to dive in, and you're going to learn. Like I would just encourage a person that's in that boat to just try some things. Like literally just take your output of your mixer and go straight to the Church Online platform and see what you learn. It goes up from there.
One of the mixes that I would always use to evaluate myself was Church on the Move and Andrew Stone's. And I mean, years ago, before the SSL days, I mean, he was using a Heritage 3K, and I love that console. It was like the first big console I ever got to use, and I thought it was so cool. It had 24 mixes and just so many knobs on it. It was, and the Midas, anyways. But I remember watching like something like a rig rundown. Maybe it was on Seeds, and he was talking about his mix, and it was really just the mix that he sent to the PA. That was the output of his thing. Mm-hmm. And it is an analog desk that, you could have for 10 grand. That may be an enormous number to some people, but when we're talking digital console world, I mean, it was very, very practical. You could pick that up on a used market, and he sent that to like a TC DV Max, just for some finalization.
Yeah.
And then that went to, and so it was just like, that was one of those aha moments for me, that it was, man, I don't have the $100,000 console, so I can't fill in the blank. Versus like, man, this is the tool I have, and this is how I use it, and I've worked on my craft. One of the things I also took away from that from that video was what they value, and so he did use like some creative mixes, or maybe to drive the PA as well, but like everything, even though they had all those mixes, like all the ears were mono, and so I think of like, if you value your online audience, maybe there's a conversation. That not everybody has to have a stereo in-ear mix. I remember the days of playing where it was like the entire band, the 5-piece band shared 2 wedges on the same mix, and somehow we made it work. And we've gone into this like area where everybody doesn't have.
The Wi-Fi's down. My click is 0.7 dB too loud. Fix it.
Yeah. Not that we're bitter. We're not bitter. This has never happened to us. But we've heard stories.
You never heard that said before.
Okay. So that, yeah. But it's like a conversation about what you value. And so if we're going to value this online audience, and this is the gear that we have, then maybe we need to free up a mix for them, so that we can serve maybe 100 people that are checking out the stream. And maybe what we give up is the preference, because I love stereo in-ears just as much as the next person, but I would be the first to raise my hand and give that up and say, yeah, I as long as I hear the hi-hat, I think I could even play without, like, just whatever defers to the online congregation would be my position. And I think another value for me when building a mix, and one thing that I judge is more than like EQ choice or, layering, is if I see it with my eyes, I want to hear it with my ears. Yep. And so I've watched a lot of streams over the past year. Not that, everybody's at a different spot, so this is not from a judging position, but it's like I'll watch a stream and I'll see a vocalist going after it, or there's a guitar player, and they're just, and I don't hear it. And so if you can even keep that simple phrase as like a value, if I see it with my eyes, I need to find a spot in the mix for it to sit with my ears. And you can grade yourself that way. And it's a process, and it's a moving target from week to week. You think you nailed it one week, and then you come back to like, oh my gosh, like, it's a journey, and we've all experienced that, but just defining what you value.
That's so cool. I love that. Sam, you have a unique situation. Not unique. You have an excellent situation there at the Edmond campus where you guys are actually sitting in your broadcast suite right now, aren't you?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. That's what I thought. So you have a broadcast suite that's away from the worship center. You're in a different room. You're pretty well isolated from everything else. You have your own set of monitors there in front of you that you're listening to, and you're building a mix there. knowing that a lot of the audience is probably watching on their laptop or on their phone, how do you make sure that that mix is going to work for them?
That's a great question. And it really is just references. And I'm not saying in terms of I need to have 13 pairs of studio monitors to understand what's happening. Even if I didn't have this space and I was mixing on a front of house console, like just a solid pair of headphones and maybe a second pair of headphones where we could just reference. So a lot of what we talk about is really just changing our perspective, getting out of the even with the studio monitors, just getting out of the studio monitors, getting on a laptop, getting that instant feedback. Okay, what's happening on a laptop? One thing we do is we do a dress rehearsal at 2:30 every Saturday. So 2:30, all the engineers are in the red and we're all recording. And then at 2:45 or 2:48, when the set's over, we all huddle up and we listen to them and we pop them around on different speakers. We pop them around on the Auratone. We put them on a laptop. We put them on an iMac. We put it on our phone. It's just a Dropbox link. And so even that is streaming, like it's buffered, like it's not even full, like it's a wave, but it's like it's streaming. So it's like, okay, what is it doing to this? And we instantly give each other feedback. And a lot of times I'm actually not the one mixing. At this point, we have a great team here of several engineers. And there's a lot of times where I'm not mixing and I'm just kind of floating and I'm just facilitating conversations. A lot of times it's like, hey, broadcast engineer, what do you think about the Pro Tools mix that happened out there? What could have been better? And he or she gives that perspective. And then they flip roles and they give each other feedback. We bring the front of house guy in to or gal in to give their opinion. We ask the worship pastor. We ask the church online staff. And really what we're looking for is perspective. So it doesn't require gear. It just requires perspective. And for us, that's people. So just getting opinions early and getting them out and directly and honestly.
Yeah. That's part of our weekly communication too. Like on Mondays, we have a recap where we watch the entire service, the worship portion of it, top to bottom, and just evaluate, what do we love and what do we learn?
You could do that with yourself. I mean, you could do that you could do that anytime. So I remember mixing front of house and recording to a USB stick. And after every service, in Life.Church, we do a lot of services. At least we used to in a lot of places before all this. But
sure.
I remember every service, I was just listening back to in between services, listening back to what I just did, and just be like, oh gosh, you need to fix this, and this, and it just you just improve at a much higher clip if you're just constantly evaluating yourself and evaluating what you're doing and just getting opinions from others.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just because service is done at noon on a Sunday doesn't mean that the learning is done. That's actually when the learning can start, right? When we have the snapshot that we can go ahead and listen back to. And
the perspective, the perspective of a night's sleep, like when you're in it,
it's different.
Your emotion is in it. Your ethos is in it, so it's like getting a night's sleep, getting out and coming back and getting a fresh perspective of your own even is valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to think like mixing front of house, I'm not the only person that would use this analogy, but I feel like that person is a part of the band and they play the loudest instrument, and that's the PA. And so you talk about like you're in it, like I'm not just managing faders when I mix. I am trying to dynamically rise and fall in tandem with the worship team. And so sometimes that's not your best like evaluating ear because you are participating in leading worship with them rather than I'm just teching. I'm not a tech, I'm a part of the team.
I'm a worshiper. Yes.
And so like I think of like when I shared the story about the somebody's feedback, maybe they don't have the right language, but it's still accurate. You asked about like phones and laptops. I would evaluate my board mixes in my studio and listen to them. It's acoustically treated. I got control room monitors, crank it up. I'm even going through a summing mixer. I'm like, man, this sounds dope. And there would be like feedback from our church, our online stream. This is prior to me being at Life.Church, where things didn't translate. They're listening to it on their laptop. And I would be like, well, your feedback is really invalid because it sounds killer in my $15,000 control room setup. But most people consume it here. And so if that's where the people are, then that's where my perspective needs to be. And so listening to that, and that affects how I would mix or even process certain things, because the decisions for the iPhone speaker or the laptop speaker are different than the studio monitor. And so just that constant feedback loop and then application of those learnings to try to get something that translates across as many mediums as possible. That's the goal. And it's difficult, but it's a pursuit.
Mm-hmm. Mix is never done. It's just do.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
good stuff.
Somebody told me that one day.
Unless your church is handing out, JBL 7 series monitors at the door for everybody to go listen to the live stream on at home.
Silent disco, man.
You do have to keep that perspective for sure. So, well, guys, where can everybody connect with you on social? It's Life.Church Tech is one of them, right? Is that still on Instagram?
Yeah, Life.Church Tech on Instagram. We talked about the clock a little bit. If you like dad jokes and inside jokes, you could follow at LC Whopper, WOPR. Nobody under you. If you know, you know. But I'm going to plug that here and hopefully get
hopefully our inboxes don't blow up.
a few followers on that account. That's one of those processes again where we try to create community around just even things like dad jokes and humor, and just keep people connected to the church throughout the week. Those are our main tech socials. Our personal socials are really irrelevant.
All the fun stuff's on these anyway. So
yeah.
And if someone does want to check out Life.Church, the church's Instagram, it is at Life.Church, and then you can of course find them online at Life.Church. That is the website. There is no .com. It is a .church. So
there is no .com, and the .tv is gone.
And the .tv is gone. That was the name of yesterday. Now is the YouTube is still Life.Church TV, is it not?
I think so. I think we can't change it, but people above us would have to answer those questions. So
fair enough.
We are on the YouTubes.
On
and
the
MySpaces.
MySpaces, yeah.
And the MySpaces.
MySpace.
Oh goodness.
Find me on Zanga.
There it is.
You realize that I'm looking at who is in the comments and who's actually viewing right now, and those were probably lost on half the people in here.
I know. It's so funny. Half of my teaching illustrations are from 80s movies, and when like tech volunteers that I would lead, they started glazing over. I was like, you've not seen, now everybody's now seen the Karate Kid, but 10 years ago I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, okay, never mind. We're getting up there.
For sure. Well, guys, thanks so much for answering these questions for me here. I've totally enjoyed this. Jordan, what do you have, man?
What's up? Guys, I think that I just want to say thank you. And I say that with a lot of different folds in that. I think that a lot of people can get caught up in the what's about what we do and the pieces of gear and the products and the things like this. And what I want to emphasize here and what I really want to say thank you for is the fact that your guys' heart is unbelievable. And I think that Life.Church should be very, very blessed to have you guys where you're at. And the reason for that, if you're told that, then that's great. But I've been kind of in the corner, just chilling out, listening here. And the investment of your time, it's not around a certain particular product. It's not around, well, we got this, so now we can do this and all of this stuff. It happens as a byproduct of the vision of your ministry and what Pastor Craig has, set out for you guys to do. And what's really cool about it is hearing that it's all about the people. It's just, the reason that I'm taken back by that right now is the fact that I just don't hear it enough. And to be reminded, even, with me being in the position at E2I and what I do here and stuff like that, it's just really nice to go back to really that bold why. Why are we doing what we're doing? And The how we achieve it is another story, and all of that stuff. The what and what we choose to do that is another story. But the why is the heart of what we do. And so I want to say thank you for one, taking the time to be with us, and two, expressing that it's not always just about the gear. It's not always about whether it's expensive or cheap or whatever it is, that it is about the heart and the why behind what we're doing, and the operational workflow behind everything, and how you guys are investing in people. And I mean, we all know that even as techs and things like that, like when we're behind something that we're unfamiliar of how to use it or what to do, it can be really intimidating. Taking and investing time in the training and making sure that a volunteer or even a staff member's time is valued, because they're investing their time. They're investing their time, and it should be valued. And what better way to train somebody and to teach somebody and direct somebody on that constantly moving ship? What better thing to do than invest time so that they feel ultimately more comfortable and can really be a part of that worship experience, as you were saying, as opposed to sweating bullets back there trying to do everything that someone else has done or someone that they know has done or whatever. Like, what better way to invest in people, to invest time and valuable information so that someone can actually let loose and have a worship experience themselves. So all of that, like I said, I've been kind of sitting back here. I know Pyron has taken the brunt of this and kind of moved the questions and everything like that. I've just been kind of jaw on the floor this whole time, guys. And I just really, really do appreciate you and your investment to Life.Church, your investment to the kingdom, your investment to like-minded ministries across the country who look at you as a guidepost, because I know your hearts. And I know that you are willing to teach, and that you guys are great teachers as well. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us on the show.
Thank you guys for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. We do appreciate having you here for sure. So, well, Jordan, man, this has been great. I've learned a lot. I know I'm going to echo what you just said. I've learned a ton today from these two guys. They've just been absolutely awesome. For those of you who are watching on the replay, if you do have a question, please leave it down in the comments in the comment section below, and we'll definitely get back to you on those if you do have a question about something that Sam or Warren had shared with us today. In the meantime, please feel free to drop us a note at hello@e2idesign.com. If you have any questions, we would also love to connect with you on all the socials, and you can find us there at E2iDesign on all of those. So I hope that everyone has had a great day. I know I've learned a lot. Jordan's learned a lot. And stay tuned. Keep an eye on your inbox and on your social platforms for the next Behind the Production.
See you guys.